Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. You're free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. And I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content that is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. My main purpose, as always, is to educate both other people and myself. So your comments can always be directed at corrections, too. This is Opening Salvo number 3, just my way of kind of getting some discussions rolling that I would like to have. Sometimes these are based on the comments. Sometimes I just have some thoughts. There's been a long-running discussion, at least with myself in my head, about the issue of truth and where science plays into that and where human experience plays in that. I remember when I was a more spiritual frame of mind, I did attend Asbury Theological Seminary, so I do have a master's degree from there. But one of the things that was taught at Asbury was called the Wesleyan quadrilateral, which was scripture, tradition, reason, and human experience. These were all the 4 teachers of truth. And so I kind of engaged that for a while, but I found that if I was going to maintain biblical inerrancy, the Bible had to be the final arbiter over all of that, that tradition needed to line up with Scripture, that reason needed to line up with Scripture, that experience needed to line up with Scripture. And Scripture becomes more central than the 4-legged stool that John Wesley was proposing in the Wesleyan quadrilateral, or supposedly proposing. I'd read Wesley, and I felt that he was a little bit more along my lines of saying Scripture was the head. He gave a nod to reason, experience, and tradition. So the question became for me now as an atheist, what is truth? Where does science fit into it? Where does, what is the way to acquire truth? Well, first of all, I think you have to have a good definition. Over the years, I've struggled with the definition of truth, and once I became an atheist, the idea of truth with a big T is, big T. No, I don't buy it as much. I am pretty skeptical of a lot of people that claim to have found the truth anymore. But I do know how to recognize things that resonate with me as true. Recently, probably in the last year, I've had to wrestle with a definition of truth found on the YouTuber Apologia. Apologia makes note of basically his definition of truth, which is that which conforms to reality and has predictive power. He adds a predictive power element because if it's true, you should be able to apply it to something and see it play out in the future. Science does this all the time. You study things and then you come up with the idea of, okay, this is the result we should be able to predict and go forward with it. And I agree. This definition I think I like a lot better than some of the other ones. So I've run with it. And I found that most of the time it works. But the idea of something that conforms to reality, okay. Now, of course, the battle there, with the Christian is what is reality. An atheist would say that the reality is the real world that we live in, with things that can be verified to exist, whereas a person of faith adds in God, spirituality, stuff that can't be verified. And that becomes a debatable point in things that people just, you can't verify, so is it reality or is it not? The predictive power element of that definition comes with the idea that if it's true, then I should be able to predict certain things based on that understanding of that truth. Now, the scientific method is pretty good for finding all of this stuff. I used to try to poke holes in the scientific method until I realized that, in general, the scientific method is designed to poke holes within itself. It's been revised many times because as we learn more about prejudicial things and other things, they become, we have to modify it. If I go back to the Western quadrilateral, reason is fine, but reason can be faulty. It's subject to fallacious reasoning. Somebody needs to catch that. Basically, what this says is you can't reason or think in a vacuum. You have to allow other thinkers to engage your ideas, which is a good thing because, they can see the flaws in it. You might be biased and they can point that out to you. Experience, same thing. The problem I've had with religious experience is it doesn't prove anything. I've made mention of this before, but I'll do it again. Your religious experience only proves your religion to yourself. It does not prove your religion to a Hindu. If you have a Christian religious experience, that doesn't mean anything to a Hindu, because a Hindu will say, I have Hindu religious experience, and that proves my faith. So it doesn't really prove your faith to have a religious experience. It just proves that you had some sort of experience. I had a discussion with one of my subscribers on this very issue. As a former Pentecostal, what are some of the things I saw, and what do I attribute to them to now? When you deal with a personal experience, the real problem I have with it is it can be so faulty. I tried to get this across to several people because there's several people that are my friends that I deal with, and they're always touting their personal experiences as an arbiter of truth. And I know from studying psychology during my political science, getting that degree, that human observation is very prone to error. You often see things that aren't there. You hear things that aren't there. You misremember things. Memory is a slippery eel, which is why the scientific method insists that you put your data on a sheet and you submit it, for peer review to make sure your data is good. This is what the scientific method does that other methods don't necessarily do, and it becomes a real good way of finding truth, or at least finding out what reality is, or finding out, using that reality to predict future outcomes. And I think that's probably the biggest change for me as an atheist, is discarding reason and experience, and above all, discarding tradition. What is tradition? It's a fable agreed upon, because tradition is very much what we've done through history. And what is history but a fable agreed upon? I don't know how accurate, but historians are really trying to implement more scientific method into their research methods, which means not a lot of things can be verified, historically speaking, but you can verify a few things reasonably so. That's why historians have turned more to archaeology and less to written down records, because written down records are subject to bias of the writer. So looking at archaeology, looking at actual movements of human beings, looking at migratory patterns, looking at battle sites, you begin to decipher some of the things that, that you have to begin to realize are false. And so history becomes a real, I enjoyed studying history when I was younger and a young adult. I think that's kind of been passed down to a couple of my kids. But history has limitations because it's not necessarily indicative of how we got here, although it can tell you that. Also, every history book that I've ever written was written by a human being that could have been wrong in their observations. So finding that is truth. So we're asking the question that Pilate asked, what is truth? I don't think it's Jesus. I don't think it's Muhammad. I certainly don't think it's any of these religions, because religions, ultimately at the end of the day, are a compilation of traditions, experiences, which can be a multitude of things, and reasoning that can be false, coupled with a supposed direct revelation, say, that you have in the monotheistic religions. Yeah, you got a problem. Now you have nothing but an appeal to authority. This becomes the real challenge to get across to people, because I want to talk to them about an issue and they'll start quoting their Bible. And quoting a Bible is nothing more than an appeal to authority. And I just don't have time for that anymore. Give me something tangible that we can all prove together that is true. And that changes the ball game quite a bit. It just deals with a whole bunch of factors that we can just take and just put them off to the side and put them on a shelf and just say, no, we don't need to do that anymore. This question of truth and where the scientific method fits into all that has been kind of on my brain. I also was asked, not really asked, I think it was somebody made a comment that I just heard and it got me thinking, I remember talking about the place of women in most religions, and it says you have to go outside of the monotheistic Abrahamic religions to get any value to women. And even then, you still have to go pretty far into what we consider a balanced pagan perspective of spirituality. When I talk spirituality, I usually talk about human interaction. I talk about the psyche, what it means to have a mind. I think ethics and morals form that basis of spirituality. How we as human beings see the universe. There's a human experience that, can't just be summed up in reason. I think for me, I find it when I appreciate a work of art or read a book, a creative work of fiction. Life as an atheist isn't purely logic and reason. We're not all Mr. Spock running around saying that everything in humanity is best understood by reason. I don't think we're doing that either. I think what we're looking for is something truly human, truly Homo sapien, or even better yet, what's truly myself. This has been my struggle with spirituality, is being myself, being truly who I am. And the reason this has been a problem, both now and in the past when I was deconverting, is because defining who you are, what your purpose is, what you're trying to achieve in the past can be very different than now. I don't have a Bible to turn to. I don't have prayer to turn to. I certainly don't give people my thoughts and prayers anymore because that's a useless waste of time. Trying to find useful ways to share in the human experience and be myself has become the greatest challenge. And sure, there's a lot of things that come up with that. And, it challenges me to be a better human being. And that's, I think, the best goal that a person can have if you're an atheist is to survive. Maybe this is very Vulcan-like, to live long and prosper. And you get to define what it means to prosper, okay? That becomes the greatest liberation. On the one hand, it's also a frightening prospect on the other. If you're the kind of person that's been in religion for a long time and you've depended on that for who you are and what you are and how you're going to proceed, this can be very, 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 very scary. And I know it was for me. The moment I realized I was an atheist, I got instantly terrified because I'm like, well, shit, there's nobody to blame for my current circumstance but me. I can't blame God for bringing me through things. I can't do any of that stuff. And so the human experience is something that I cling to. It's something that I enjoy now, but it's scary as fuck sometimes. It makes you realize how precious and fragile life can be. I was discussing politics with someone, I can't remember who, and this was a while ago. They're like, well, you don't want an atheist with his hand on the button, that could blow up the world. And I said, actually, you'd want an atheist with their hand on the button, because an atheist knows if he pushes that button, he ends everything. There's no having tea and crumpets with Jesus. There's no 72 virgins in paradise. There's no, drinking mead with Odin in Valhalla. There's no, Sheol, afterlife. There's none of that crap. There's no Abraham's bosom. When a person's life ends, when the world ends, that's it. We're done. Over. Game over. And it's this permanency of the end that I think would stay the hand of an atheist quicker than it'd be a theologian. A theology person that believes in some of those afterlife questions will say, oh, well, we're all just going to heaven. Whereas an atheist would go, no, blowing up the world might be a bad idea because that ends everybody and it's a permanent goodbye. And that's something that people need to consider. So there's that aspect. I always kind of want to end, I guess, with a little bit of thought about logic and reasoning and fallacies. Last time I talked about defining terms when you go into an argument. Today I just want to reiterate that I don't allow ad hominem attack. When you're attacking the person or character of a person, that's not a logical thing. That extends in a lot of different directions. But the basis for this is when you're calling somebody a name, it basically, you don't have any thoughts about how to handle their argument, so you attack their character. A person's character is irrelevant to the truth of their claims. This is what ad hominem basically says. You can call somebody a racist, for instance, all you want. That's a normal one these days. It doesn't change the fact that they may say something true. Just because you perceive somebody as a racist doesn't mean that they can't tell you something true. Ad hominem, just when you start engaging in name calling, basically, in my opinion, I've always felt that whenever I've been in a discussion, somebody started calling me names or insinuating things about my character or whatever, it's at that point I realized, you know what, I've won this thing. Okay, I've already won the fight. They don't have anything else. I've won this round. They don't have anything else to give to me. So that's kind of, the reason ad hominem is not a good argument. I don't generally try to not use it or encourage it. In fact, I discourage it. It's why I say, in the comments, you can demonstrate somebody's being foolish, just don't call them a fool. But demonstrating something is far more work than just calling somebody a name. You can call somebody a racist, you can call somebody a homophobe, you can call somebody, a conservative asshole or a liberal asshole. You can call them whatever you want to call them, but if you don't demonstrate that that's true, you're just name calling. You're just using shock value to end the fight. It's also not very constructive or compassionate or it doesn't demonstrate any humility whatsoever. When you call somebody else a name, you have placed yourself in the arbiter, the final judge of that person. And I don't know, I've lived long enough to know that I don't belong in that seat, and I don't think anybody else does either. Not even God. Certainly not the God of the Bible, because he's kind of an asshole. But I think we need to realize that what ad hominem, and I think the best defense against ad hominem is humility, is to realize you can be wrong. And just because somebody maybe of a stripe or a different caliber of character than you doesn't mean that what they're saying isn't true. You have to look at the truth of somebody's claims, not the conduct of their character when they're making the claim. Like it or not, some really asshole people say truthful things, and some really nice people lie, whether deliberately or undeliberately. You got to remember, every argument has to be founded in this understanding of looking past the personal character of the person making the argument and get to the heart and soul of what the argument is. That's how you avoid ad hominem. Well, I want to thank you once again for coming by my channel. I appreciate you here. I'm at Rabyd, the Rabyd Atheist, and I work hard to be a compassionate anti-theist. I suppose I should explain that again. I have explained it once before, I think. I'm the kind of atheist that's not, if you're still a theist, I'm not going to jump down your throat. Now, if you're looking for a purely clean channel where the guy doesn't cuss, that ain't it. I originally tried to make a commitment not to cuss on this channel, but certain topics apparently trigger me and set me off, so that kind of went out the window. And I've often joked, when people hear me cuss at work, they're like, weren't you a minister? I said, yes. And I have a plethora of stored up cuss words from biting my tongue, and now, I've got a surplus and they're all coming out. So that's kind of the way I look at it. But, I just, don't assume a lot of things about a person. Be good to them, be humble and deal with them on that level. But, this is about discussion. It's about having an open discussion. of saying this is what's going on. Somebody asked me what my main purpose for my channel is, and I said, well, to educate, and mostly I deal with people that have deconverted so far, people that have been Christians that have left, not so much atheists that have always been atheists, but it's a whole group of us here basically now that we used to be whatever, and now we're not. And we're listening to each other and talking to each other because that's what we need. But once again, I want to welcome you to the channel. Thank you for coming. In the comments below, just make sure you keep the name calling out of it. Stick to the substance of your arguments and make your point. I'm going to try to get videos up Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but Wednesday's videos on the life of Christ are subject to whatever time factor that I often have. This should be good this week because I have a day off coming up here soon, and I should be able to get that video done. But we'll see. I've got other things in the fire too. But usually Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'd appreciate it if you comment below, like, dislike, do the things that you do, subscribe, get your notification bell the way it's supposed to be. And I hope to someday convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Rabyd, the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.